Happy Saturday.
Good morning. Happy Saturday.
How are you?
I'm good. Should we tell the world that we hung out yesterday and stayed up a little later than we should?
After months of not seeing each other.
I know. We finally couldn't do it anymore. We're like, we have to see each other. It was so fun yesterday.
It was fun. Brought a little normalcy to
Yes.
our life right now.
Yeah, we tried to stay as far as we could from each other, but there was moments we got a little closer. It was so fun. I was so happy to have you all over yesterday. I was like, people, yay.
And the kids had fun and great food and drinks. It was a good time.
Thanks. Well, you know, I love to cook, so I'm glad you guys were. I was so worried that you guys were hungry. I was laying in bed last night and going, I think they're still hungry. And Gary's like, can you stop?
That's all Rick on the way home was talking about how much food he was eating even towards the end of the night.
Well, yeah, after our little bit of drinks, we got hungry again. We went the second round. Well, good. I am glad we're both up and we're here on a beautiful, sunny Saturday morning, talking to each other, talking to the people who are hopefully interested in the topic. And let's just dive in. So our topic for today is renting versus buying. It's a big question that a lot of people always question. What is better? And our goal for today is not really to tell you all better or worse, just to give you some information and kind of the steps to take to make your analysis. I feel like in our area, just being in real estate for 16 years, majority of people do tend to go the route of buying. But if you look at national stats as a whole in our country, a lot of people are renting because ownership is unaffordable because it's too expensive. So we're very, very blessed here that we have the ability to buy more than other areas. But we're going to talk about just in general what to consider.
Yes. And this one hits a little home for me too. So we can talk about that as we're going through it.
I know. I'm so excited for you. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to share a screen. I'm going to zoom in.
I'm going to pull up our videos on here too. So while you're doing that, I'll pull up our videos, see how many people we have.
Yep. And let me know if we have any questions before, any highs, and then we will jump. All right, let me share.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. I could see that.
Okay. I'm trying to make it a little bigger, but whatever I'm pressing is not working. Is it visible? Can you see it easily?
Yes, I can see it pretty good.
Cool. Cass, do we have any questions, any highs, anybody we can say anything to before we start?
Let's see. We have about 10 people on. Come
Awesome.
say hi to us. Let us know if you have any questions.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining buying versus renting topic. And please, 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 as always we say, ask questions, and then we'll do our best to answer. And if we can't answer, we will follow up with you afterwards and send you whatever information you need from us to help you with your decision. Okay, so we're just going to go into, and I'm just going to go through it. Cass, please give examples of whatever you want to jump in with, okay? So buying versus renting. So the pros of renting, I'm just going to read it. Mobility, freedom to move around. Landlord pays the maintenance, doesn't require expensive closing costs. There's obviously fees of the deposits and security deposit, but they're typically less than down payment. So that's why the fees are less. No fluctuation in monthly housing expenses. So you know exactly what you pay. Allowance to test drive different living spaces. So yeah, you're not committing. You can try apartments versus houses versus condos versus townhomes and not be committed. And as a tenant, there's a possibility that living in an area which you could usually normally not afford. So this definitely applies to our area too, but majority when I was doing my research was more in the bigger cities like, Los Angeles and New York, where it's just super expensive. So if you really want to live in a good school district or whatever else is important to you in the area, very often you just can't afford because they're $1 million properties. So those are pros of renting. So there's definitely positives. Anything Cass, you want to add?
Well, I know some of those are positives, but I know like the one, for instance, that we had to deal with, the landlord does pay the maintenance on anything with the house, but how long does that usually take? How long could that take for him to come out there, get it done instead of you doing it yourself?
You know what? I didn't even think about it. I was doing it more as a research, but yeah, you did rent for many years, so you know for sure what happens. And there's definitely some good landlords out there, but majority take forever to come out, and it's a very valid point.
Yeah.
So, anything else for the pros for renting?
That's the one that stuck out to me when you were going over those.
Gotcha. So cons of renting. So then obviously the negatives is you don't build any equity. You're paying every single month and you have nothing to unfortunately show at the end because you're not making any savings from there. Limited ability to customize your living space. That's a big one, I think, for a lot of people who especially are creative or who like to paint or like to let their kids do whatever. You're definitely limited on that. Rent could go up over time, so you really have no control. So where with a mortgage, unless you do an adjustable rate where you lock in the rate, you know your payment, for most part, it stays the same. The only way it would really change is if property taxes change. In rent, the landlord every year can increase based on inflation, and you really have no say unless it's in your lease agreement that the rent is secure for X, Y, and Z years, which most landlords don't really want to do that more than a year.
Yeah.
Landlord might sell or decide to stop renting. That actually happened to me as a child. We were in between housing before my parents bought a house, and it was a crazy story. We moved into a rental, and I don't know, I was a kid, so I probably should have asked my parents now what happened and like what did it not sign. But after about a month of just moving in, we get a notice that says, "So sorry, we found somebody who wants to buy this house. You need to move out in 1 week."
Oh my gosh.
So again, I should have dived into it. I should ask them what happened. Like, did they not have a contract? Was it not for a year? I have no idea what happened. There's probably a story there that's beyond what I know. But yeah, that really happened. As a kid, I remember that was like the most displaced feeling when you just got your room settled and you're all excited and your parents are like, "Well, we're packing because the landlord decided to sell."
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a crazy, crazy start in my life. Limited sense of home stability. So it kind of brings up to as a kid, that as a child, I felt unstable because of that situation. But in general, just for adults or children, that part is there. And then it's a lot of landlords, when you are renting or apartments or houses, have a lot of restrictions. So we actually help a lot of our investor clients buy properties and rent them out. And there's definitely a great business to it. There's a great model to it. There's a great benefit to people who are not wanting to buy. And we'll talk about how do you decide whether you're a renter or buyer towards the end. But for most part, we put really strict restrictions, either no pets or if we see safe pets under a certain pound, so you can't get any kind of dog, only a certain type of dog. There's always security deposits that are non-refundable. And people are paying for them because they have no choice. That's very common. But that's something to keep in mind. If you're going the route of renting and you're planning to get animals, you might be a little restricted on that.
Yeah. And one that sticks out to me in this one also is like the customizing your living space. Where we currently rent, we did end up painting one of the girls' rooms.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we're moving, we have to repaint it. So now I'm spending the time and energy to paint over what we did decide to paint because that was in their contract.
Yeah, you were actually somewhat lucky that you were even allowed to paint. I know that in a lot of our properties that we lease, it says on there, painting is not allowed. So you're not even allowed to do it. It's not even about if you want or if you want to do it later, but you're just not. Whatever wall color is there, it's what it is. And if you put any kind of pictures and damage anything, that you got to fix up before you move out too.
Yes.
So pros of buying. So there's definitely pros and cons of buying as well. So let's go over that. So when you buy, obviously the positive is you do build equity over time. Home values may increase, obviously. In our market, it ranges, it's been actually a little more aggressive, but on average is about 2 to 3% a year that the values increase, but it's been higher this past year or two. But if you look at overall, again, if you're looking at a home purchased as a long-term investment. The home values, if you talk to anybody who bought their house in the 80s, that's always really fun, or 70s or 60s, you're like, what did you buy your house for? And they'll be like, 28,000, 48,000. And then of course, at that moment, you're like, why was I like not alive or buying houses at that point or whatever? But it's going to happen in the future as well, just because there's nothing we can do. Inflation will happen. So home values may increase. I wrote as just a disclaimer, but really, if you look at history, they've always been increasing. Honestly, just because of inflation, besides everything else. Is definitely giving you security and equity and potential growth and personal wealth as well. I mean, if you look at big wealth, people who are, in the financials, if you really dive into their places where they have wealth put in all their finances, it's not just in stocks. A lot of them do have real estate and real estate all over the world. If they're obviously blessed enough to be that, there's a reason they do that, because at the end of the day, it is a stable, long-term. It's not going to go away. Stock can go down. It could become all of a sudden, everything could change, but the actual house and land can never, ever change. So there's definitely people diversify when they're looking at wealth build. Okay, you may reap tax benefits. So there used to be a lot more tax benefits of having a home. So you were able to write off taxes, property taxes more. You were able to write interest more, but overall, there's still benefits of owning, and your accountant can actually give you a lot more details on that. Unlimited freedom of customizing your living space. Beautiful thing when it's yours. You do whatever you want to do.
Yep.
Until you're ready to sell, and then we come to your house, and then we tell you again. But I mean, that's true. I always say that to people. I go, the way you live and the way you sell are different. So living. Enjoy your home, do what you want to do. When it comes down to selling, we obviously help you maximize because we want to get you the highest return. But the beautiful thing is you don't have to ask. You don't have to ask, do I get a dog? Can I get a dog? How big is a dog? What's my security deposit? What do I need to paint? Do whatever you want. Yeah. All right, in terms of home stability, there's definitely a pride that comes from owning a home and knowing that it's mine. This is where I'm raising my family. This is where my kids come home. This is where their friends coming. And I think it's very special. So there's definitely that part of it. That's not financial, but an emotional that sometimes makes a bigger impact in life than in financials. Any thoughts on that, Cass?
Oh, we're in the process of buying, and like the happiness from my kids, like, where we're moving to, the type of house we're getting, that makes it worth everything.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
I know. It's so cute. Even though just talking about like, I'm going to have a trampoline and I'm going to do this. And like, just even having those dreams and plans of what they're wanting to do in there. It was just so cute yesterday when I was talking to them.
Their own bathroom. They have like plans what they want to do to and how they're remodeling it. Bella's very expensive budget she has.
Our Bella. When I'm 16, I'm going to get a Lamborghini. I'm like,
So
I was funny. Like, how do you know what a Lamborghini is? Let's start with that. And then two, I love her positivity and her ambitions.
She better start working soon.
I know. I should have showed her my car when I got at 16. So that would have probably not inspired her as much. Maybe show you the reality of my car. But I loved her excitement for it. And you're right. That's such a priceless thing for kids to have that pride of this is my home and this is how I'm going to decorate it. So, and then because currently interest rate, overall, it is still cheap. It's renting could be cheaper just because you don't have the expenses, but because of the current interest rate, I would definitely recommend, and we'll talk about, weighing the current interest rate and coming up with a payment and doing whatever your rent payment is, and then do the math. I think you'd be surprised when interest rates are at 2.99, how cheap it is to actually own versus rent. But overall, renting could be cheaper than owning a home in general as a whole. All right, cons of buying. So positives of buying a home. So closing costs. I'm sorry, not positives. The negatives. Negatives of buying a home. So obviously, you have to consider not only affordability factor, but you got to consider how much down payment do I need to bring and how much closing costs I need to do. So there's definitely costs associated that could prevent you from buying. So definitely Consider that. Responsibility of maintenance. A lot of times people are definitely afraid of that. Just what if my furnace breaks? What if my water heater breaks? There are insurances and things that you can do if you do have that. Like if you are thinking of buying, but that scares you, there are warranties that you can buy for that. But overall, there's definitely a responsibility, just like a car, right? Or anything out there. So if it ever breaks and you don't have a landlord to call, you got to take care of it. So that's why it requires not only financials, but also effort. I mean, I know my husband, who I love very much, that is his biggest thing of home ownership, and we've owned homes for many, many years at this point, is that not the payment doesn't bother him, that's part of life and expenses, but the maintenance of it. Hey, this broke and that broke, and I got to call a plumber and I got to check that. Like, it's not enjoyable for him at all. So if it was up to him, he'd probably be renting, but he's stuck with me. So he's owned houses. Less flexibility to move. So obviously when you purchase a home, you can't just get up and be like, oh, I decided to move to South Carolina. There's a process you got to go through, and there's a commitment. So you have to think of, how much are my fees to sell? What's the price point? So it's definitely not as flexible. Home values may decrease. I mean, it's hard to, sad to then say that out loud, because we've had such a healthy market for the last at least 6 years at this point. But overall, it could happen. And when people ask us for, during consultation, is there a guarantee my house will go up? Is there a guarantee of this? There are no guarantees. Market goes down and economy changes drastically, it could absolutely decrease. So there's definitely a con of that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's been tax laws that several years ago have been put in place that unfortunately are not as beneficial. Because it used to be you were supposed to write off your taxes, property taxes totally, and interest rate that you're doing. And now there's restrictions to that. So definitely talk to your accountant about that to make sure you understand what are that look like. So that's it on that. Cass, anything on the cons of buying?
So the one thing that I just thought of when you were going over that is also, people looking to buy and rent and their credit score.
Okay.
So as your credit score, if you're purchasing, has to be at a certain credit score. Where renting, they're a little more flexible depending on how it is, but buying, you have to be at a certain credit score to purchase.
Yeah, you're very good point. So yeah, it's not just fees that I put as the closing costs can be prohibitive, but it's also your credit score if you're not to par.
Yeah.
So that's where you would want to definitely understand, what is credit score? Why is it important to have a good credit score? And there's definitely lenders out there that can help you with that for sure.
Yeah.
So I will tell you though, I would add just one thing about renting, that at least any reputable place that you would want to rent that's especially really nice, there's definitely at this point, it's like a norm where a background is being checked on you and your credit score is being checked as well.
Yeah.
Like Cass mentioned that when it's a private sector, like a landlord that's renting, it definitely, there's no rules in place. So a landlord could meet you and say, hey, you didn't have a great credit score because 10 years ago you had medical issues or whatever. I'm good with it. I really don't worry about it. It's fine. Let's just do a little bigger deposit or whatever. Where a bank will not be able to do that. There's just definitely guidelines that you have to follow.
Yeah.
All right. So these are the 5 things that I want to leave off, and then we'll do the final chart and we'll wrap up for today. So rent versus buy, how to decide in 5 steps. So just a little simple thing. And for time's sake, I'm not going to go into detail on each one, but if you guys have any questions or you need me to go any deeper on anything, either ask or just let us know. We'll follow up with you. But number one that you should decide when you're deciding whether you should buy or rent, decide how long you plan to live in the same place. That's a big one. If you are thinking of moving in, honestly, 2 to 3 years, and you were relocating to this area and you were asking for our professional opinion, I probably would definitely at least not steer you or show, but I would provide you rental options in the area, because 2-3 years is not a long enough time to be able to move in. You will definitely have the positives of enjoying that place, whatever you want, but to move in and then pay the fees all when you're buying and then pay all the fees to sell, there might be a financial, just not a good idea to do financially. Personally, do whatever you want, but financially, if somebody would ask, if somebody's looking to live in a place for 2-3 years, I probably would advise for them to rent. So number one question, decide how long you plan to live and make a decision. Anything over 5 years, if you're planning to stay anywhere for more than 5 years, then buying. Typically, if you did a mortgage, if you did a calculator between buying and renting, you would see there'll be a benefit of buying versus renting if you're staying at least 5 years longer in a place. Estimate the cost of renting versus buying. So there's, like I said, a lot of calculators out there. So if you just Google rent versus buy calculator, you can plug in, hey, if I'm renting for $800 a month, or I'm buying a house at $1,100 or $900, whatever it is, it will give you a full chart, and it will give you at the end with all the tax benefits and whatever else, what is your bottom line between the two? So that will really help somebody make a decision, what makes financial sense. Mobility versus putting down roots. Definitely think of that, which we talked about, of what is important to you. Weigh the risks of renting and buying. So that's number 4 that you should consider. Think about, do you have not only enough money for the mortgage payment, taxes, and insurance and utilities for your home, which is what you would consider just if you were renting because you have fixed, but what if something broke? Do you have money aside for that? So definitely make sure you are planning for that, not planning for things to break. It's kind of sad to think of, but what if something comes up? Do you have that? Or before you know it, if you just focus on, I can afford the payment, you are going to be house poor, and that's never a good feeling. So we do our best to guide people not to do that. Assess your financial situation is number 5. So 1 through 5, those are your 5 major things that you should consider. And then if you're able to answer and it's steering towards buy, then obviously buy is a great thing. If you're answering those questions and it's short term, I don't have funds saved, and I don't have down payment or any of that stuff all put together, my credit score is not there, then probably renting is a good option. But again, before you make that decision, ask your questions and then reach out to a professional. There are plenty of amazing financial advisors out there. So let us know. We can refer somebody to you. There's great accountants out there that can do the math. And then probably the easiest and the cheapest place for you to go to get quick answers to that is a mortgage loan officer. So there's plenty of great loan officers that Cass and I work with that would, at no charge, have a great conversation with you, ask you the right questions, and then give you guidance based on that. Right, Cass?
That's perfect. Yes. Knowing what you're getting into, whatever way you decide, is a must.
Yes, for sure. All right. So the last chart that I thought I wanted to leave us off, and then we can answer any questions anybody might have. There's a million of these charts, and I just did up to 15 years. But if you do like 30 years or more, but I figured most people move every 8 to 11 years at this point in our market. So up to 15 years was a good chart to show. But you never think about it, right? You pay every single month mortgage, and it is what it is. But at the end, you hope you obviously pay off the house. So that's a benefit of buying, right? That's the big thing. With the rent, you're paying, you're not thinking, well, I'm living here, right? So that's fine. But if you look at the numbers, I don't know, I just think it's crazy when you look at the numbers. If you have rent is $800, which is pretty much impossible to find nowadays. But if you were lucky enough to find something really affordable out there for $800, in 1 year, you pay almost 10 grand, 5 years, 48,000, 10 years, 96, in 15 years, just $800, 144,000.
This chart, every time I see it, just hurts my heart.
I know.
It'll be 5. It would have been 5 years this year for us.
Yeah.
So you look at those numbers, and it's crazy.
I know. And at the end, it's, for 144,000, you can get a really nice house and pay it off and then enjoy it for the rest of your life. So just pay some taxes and utilities. All right. So if you look at obviously 900,000, it goes up. But if you go up to 1,500, so for our luxury rentals that we have out there, or people decide, who are made a decision that they're going to move too soon or whatever, if you actually changed your mind and you're staying in that place for 15 years, which I hope you don't, because we will probably stalk you after about 2 years max, you're going to pay $270,000 in 15 years. That's not even that long of a time. You've been running Cass, like you said, 5 years, and that flew by. Before you know it's 15 years, 270,000, and you have no house, no say, a much older home, and a landlord that dictates whatever you want. So again, there's no right or wrong, and go through these 5 things, and I think that will help you decide which route is the best for you. All right, I'm going to stop sharing.
And if anyone wants a copy of that, we can send that to them, right?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Just comment and we will answer the question.
Perfect.
And then we'll send it over to them.
Let me take a look. We still have about 10 people on watching, and no questions coming through though. No questions on renting versus buying.
Yeah. It must be that all our clients are owners at this point. So they already know. They know benefits. So I think that's it. Kat, did you have anything else from your personal experience? Because like, I feel like you're a little closer to this topic than I am. I've been a homeowner for many, many years at this point.
Yeah. So I think it's, when we got into renting 5 years ago, we sold our house. We were living in a 900 square foot house. The family was growing. I wanted to stay in the area, and I wanted our next house to be the house we're in for a long time. So that's why we decided to rent for a little bit. A little bit ended up being 5 years.
Yeah.
But I think we were in a rush to find something at that point. So, reading those details of your contract when you're renting and when you're purchasing, it goes both ways. But, knowing all the details of what you're responsible for, what the landlord's responsible for, how to get out of your lease when that time comes, knowing all the details on that.
Yeah, no, very good point. And for those who are watching, know that a realtor can help you not only with purchasing, but also finding a rental. If you decide renting is the route for you, a realtor can help you and make sure you understand the lease you're signing. Cass, how much would have been better, right? If you like really dived into the lease and made sure you're 100% understood everything, or at least had somebody at that point out like, hey, like if you need to get out early or your lease renews automatically every year, like such a simple clause like that, right?
Yeah.
Sorry for bringing that up, as I know.
Yeah, no.
But I think it's helpful people because Cass is in real estate. She's a realtor. This is what she does, right? And before she was in the way she is and just not in the industry as, not as fully invested in it. She's like, sign, we're good. We'll figure that out later, right?
And then a house, so I was like, tell me where to sign.
Yeah. And the thing about it is that she probably still would have been fine running it, but she would have at least known that clear. But instead, many years later, somebody's like highlighting this tiny little clause. Yeah, it automatically renews when this time comes, and that's it. And you really can't have, saying that as well. So lease agreements, make sure you read. Purchase agreement, make sure you read. Make sure you understand. Don't sign anything until you get it. If you have a good realtor, have them review it with you. If you have a good attorney, have an attorney review it and make sure you understand it. That money that you invest into that will really help you understand what you're getting yourself into. Don't just jump in.
Definitely.
But we're so excited for Cass to hopefully close on her house soon.
Next month.
And I know. We're so excited for you and so happy this is happening. And you're going to be close to your mama and your dad, and kids are excited. And you'll be a proud homeowner who's going to paint whatever she wants.
All the crazy colors they picked out.
Maybe I should stop by before we go that route. Cass is like, I don't know what's worse, Ina or my landlord. It's so tough. It's so hard.
I'll send you pictures.
You do whatever you want. I would love it. I'm sure I will. Well, we're done for this beautiful Saturday morning coffee talk. Thanks for all for joining.
Next week, do you want to let them know about next week?
Oh, yeah. So next week is 4th of July already, right? I'm not confusing my days. It's 4th of July next week.
Oh,
no, is it not?
Oh,
is it not?
Next weekend's the 27th.
Never mind. No, 4th of July. We're done. We're going to have a story about 4th of July. We're skipping that. We'll tell you all next week about it. Yeah. That said, well, have a great day, everybody. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next week. Bye, Cass.
Bye.
Have a great day.
You too.